Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Great to be back with you here. We take a little bit of a break from the National Football League with championship games. Still a few days away. Today on the show, we'll recap an epic game in the NBA last night and a couple epic performances as well. Gilbert McGregor will be along for the ride coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Also, Matthew Waters is our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report. And by the way, today, although it really has nothing to do with sports wagering, let's be honest, the National Baseball Hall of Fame is going to announce who's getting in the Baseball Hall of Fame today. We thought we would check in with my old friend Mike Cameron, former member of the Seattle Mariners, Cincinnati Reds, and of course New York Mets. Hit 4 home runs in one game at one point. He's going to be with us a little bit later in the program. Played with all these guys who are going in the Hall of Fame today, and actually we will have a preview video from Ben Stevens of the upcoming games this week. But as we begin the show today, lots of NBA to start off with. There was a trade. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's start off with the best performance of the season from a scoring perspective. It was Joel Embiid, who is having an MVP-type season already, scored 70 points last night, 7-0 against the San Antonio Spurs. Sixers win 133-123. 18 years ago today, or yesterday, I should say, Kobe Bryant had 81 points in a game. You remember that day? Well, Joel Embiid, I guess, did too, and he put up a 70 spot yesterday. But he wasn't the only one with a big game in the NBA. How is it possible a player could score 62 points in an NBA game and still lose? I guess Wilt Chamberlain got used to that years ago. But Karl Anthony Towns last night for Minnesota had 62 points against the Hornets. They lost 128-125, so 2 players with 60-plus points in the National Basketball Association last night. How about that? Okay, quick trade in the NBA. Extra piece for extra piece, I guess you would consider it. Terry Rozier is headed to the Miami Heat from the Charlotte Hornets. In return, Kyle Lowry, once upon a time, a great player in the NBA, and the Heat wanted him badly a couple of years ago, but they shipped him out. He goes to Charlotte. Also, a first-round pick is going to Charlotte from the Miami Heat as well. The Heat never has first-round picks, so this is no surprise there. So trade in the NBA. Lowry, the new member of the Hornets, and Rozier, a new member of the Miami Heat. That's the summary there. Okay, National Football League, we've got some hirings going on. It is Brian Callahan. He's the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, hired away from the Cincinnati Bengals. He was their offensive coordinator, did a great job there, obviously with Joe Burrow and company, and even with Jake Browning to a degree. So Callahan, next head coach of the Titans. Former NFL player Dan Morgan has been hired as GM and president of football operations. He was a Panthers first-round pick in 2001, also an All-American at the University of Miami. So congrats to Dan Morgan there. The Philadelphia Eagles have fired their defensive coordinator. Now they fired their offensive coordinator. Brian Johnson has been let go. Sean Desai was let go a couple days ago. Eagles making all kinds of changes to the coordinators. They had an epic collapse at the end of their season, but you knew that or you wouldn't be watching the show. Also, the Jaguars have hired Ryan Nielsen as their defensive coordinator there. Okay, over to some college news, and you may remember this story about allegations of sports wagering going on at a couple of universities, Iowa and Iowa State. Well, the attorney for some of the Iowa State players that are charged in the wagering case is basically saying this is a bunch of bunk. It is warrantless. It shouldn't have been happening. There was no reasonable cause to open up the investigation. So we will check in more on this story with our friends from Legal Sports Report coming up. Arizona's athletic director, after 7 years, Dave Heek, has been out. He's been let go. No wonder Jed Fish bailed. Arizona's AD is out as well. Former Washington receiver Gurmy Bernard has committed to Alabama following their appearance in the college football playoff. And also former Arizona running back Jonah Coleman has committed to Washington, the team that we saw in the college football championship. Okay, over to the NBA. It's going to be a game off tonight for those of you who are playing the association this evening. No LeBron James for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's got an ankle issue, and they're playing the Clippers. He's going to be out of this game tonight, so appropriately make sure you adjust your wagering notes. Cavaliers forward Imani Bates has been suspended from an incident in the G League. He went into the stands, and now he has been suspended as well. Odd story there. College basketball news. What a rough season and a rough start for DePaul University. They started off the year 3-15, and head coach Tony Stubblefield has been shown the door. He is out. It was his 3rd season coaching DePaul. Also, UConn and Purdue remain atop the AP poll. Kansas dropped 4 spots to number 7 after their loss last week to West Virginia. Okay, now a story for the unusual going on. How about this one? There was a man who raised a bunch of red flags after wanting to place a $500,000 wager on this very little-known boxing match. And as it turns out, the man who was trying to place the wager was the manager of one of the boxers. He was trying to place a bet on how long the fight would go. Specifically, if I'm not mistaken, it was over 6.5 rounds. Well, why did he want to place the bet? He had his boxer there, too. Very compelling story that we'll have to follow. And at least the red flags were raised and they noticed that there was something off about this. But I guess when anybody tries to bet $500,000 on a very obscure boxing match, this is going to happen. The Joker and his tree, Novak Djokovic, they have both reached the 11th Australian Open semifinals over Taylor Fritz, 3 hours, 45 minutes. The Joker is back again. And the Pittsburgh Pirates are spending money again, second straight year. How about this? Aroldis Chapman, who couldn't get a gig last year at the beginning of the year, 1 year, $10.5 million. He ends up signing with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And finally, one other baseball note, the Los Angeles Dodgers are closing in on a deal with left-handed pitcher James Paxton, 35 years old. The Dodgers at this point do not have enough with whatever they have. They've decided to just go, I don't even know what the word is for it anymore. All in would be, wouldn't be appropriate for it. So naturally, that's what's going to happen there. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, today, coming up around, I believe it's like 6:30 Eastern time, it's a very big day for those of you who are baseball fans. And I know there just has not been a lot to talk about, and it hasn't been a lot of signings, and it's, things have been kind of dull. I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not going to sit here. It's been a great offseason. But today is a really great day because there are players that you probably have watched in your past that are going to be elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame today. And it looks like, at least according to some of the tracking, there's a chance that there could be as many as 4. Oh, my guess will probably be 3 players that are going to get in. And we thought that we would bring in somebody who is well schooled on the players, who player who played with all these guys, and that is Mike Cameron. He's going to join us a little bit later in the show, so stay tuned for that coming up later on NewsWire. Cam and I go way back to his days with the Mariners and the Reds and the Mets, and actually played on the Marlins for a short period of time. So make sure you stay with us. He'll tell us about who should be in, who shouldn't have made it, and he has strong opinions on the Seattle Mariners, of course, because he's so close to that organization. So stay tuned for that as well. But coming up next, what a great time to have Gilbert McGregor on the show. We got a 70-point score. We got a 62-point score. We got a trade in the NBA. We're going to get all the reaction coming up next as Gilbert joins us courtesy of Sporting News right after this quick timeout. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be back right after these quick messages. So stay on the grid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Kyle Shanahan said after the game it was the same shoulder that made Deebo Samuel miss 2 games throughout this regular season in 2023.
Last time it was a scapular fracture. He missed a couple weeks. By video, we don't see that. It was the play that he got hit and had a head check. It's more believed to be a muscle injury. X-rays are proven to be negative. They're saying 50-50 right now.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a Knicks fan. I feel bad for Obi Toppin. I mean, Obi Toppin was backing up Julius Randle, and then he got his opportunity. Indiana was playing great. Didn't play D. Brought him off the bench. And now they got Pascal Siakam, and now he's going to a free agent year. So Obi may be looking for a new home. But I do like that fast break if it's Halliburton with Obi and Siakam.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
they were best friends. Like like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA, and they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled like seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories. But Raptors responded.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Lots of news in the NBA last night and even a trade today. So let's break it all down with Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. He joins us now here on the show. And Gilbert, listen, I thought we had enough content to talk about here with a couple of high point scorers last night. But we did get a trade announced about 30 minutes ago where the Miami Heat have parted ways with Kyle Lowry. Terry Rozier comes back in return. And Gilbert, I remember once upon a time, not too long ago, the Heat was clamoring to get Kyle Lowry. And I mean, I think this was like just 2 years ago. And certainly he had his moments in the playoffs for them. But to say that it worked out would be unfair. This was not a trade that went in Miami's favor.
It's interesting timing. You mentioned that, and you think about Kyle Lowry joining the team a few years ago, leaving Toronto on that 3-year, $90 million deal via sign and trade. And I think the best way to say it is that they got the most out of that partnership. To think that they were one win away from the finals in 2022, made the finals last year in 2023, but really did not have enough. And I think it was pretty evident once they fell short to the teams they fell short to. Now you look at this trade, they get Terry Rozier, who is 8 years younger than Kyle Lowry, who, don't get it wrong, he's a champion. He's a tough player on both ends of the floor, but now getting younger, a guy who averages 23 points per game this season, a little bit under 7 assists. He's not necessarily known for his defense, but what he brings to the table in Miami adds another dynamic offensively as a scorer, as a passer. And they're younger now, and it makes them a tougher team in the Eastern Conference. And when they're trying to catch Boston and Milwaukee and Philadelphia. So I think that this helps them in their prospect to contend in the Eastern Conference. And he's also under contract through at least next season as a partial guarantee for the 2025-26 season. So it's a future-focused move to get younger, add more scoring, and build for the future.
Yep, and the Heat trading another first-round pick. I don't think they're ever going to use one of these, Gilbert, for the next 20 years. They just don't like those picks. Okay, so last night, Joel Embiid putting his stamp on what has been an MVP caliber season. He has a streak going of 30 points or more, and then yesterday puts up 70 points for the Philadelphia 76ers. They win the game 133-123. And I don't know. What is it, Gilbert, about him this year that has been not just at an all-star level, but an out-of-this-world player?
Out of this world level, I mean, honestly, once-in-a-generation type level of what we're seeing from Joel Embiid. To think that he's won the scoring title in back-to-back years and is somehow outdoing what he's done in the 2 previous years is really impressive. To say that he's one of 9 players in points in a game, that says all you need to know about the body of work that he's putting together this season. It speaks to what the 76ers are doing with head coach Nick Nurse, and really the fact that his teammates believe in him, obviously trusting him to continue to give him the basketball. And you could say they did it against the Spurs and talk down on, how good the Spurs are or how good the Spurs aren't. But when you look at the history of players having games like this, it typically doesn't happen against playoff caliber teams anyway. So taking care of business against lesser opponents and really putting together the body of work. He's averaging 36.1 points per game after that performance, which is one of the 10 best seasons in NBA history, talking about scoring averages. So what he's doing is something that we've never really seen from a player that big. Obviously, Wilt Chamberlain did things that he did, and they're unreal, that are very much unbelievable. But for him to do it with the guard skills that he plays with, the way he's able to be versatile on both ends of the floor is super special, and it could very well lead to another MVP award.
He's playing like it. And boy, Karl-Anthony Towns thought that he was going to have the best night in the NBA last night. Not only did he not, Embiid outscored him by 8, but they also lost, Minnesota did. But, on a normal day, this is the headline. But the NBA gave us 2 other headlines with the trade and Embiid. So Anthony Towns, he takes the third string story here, unfortunately, on the show, Gilbert.
It's incredible when somebody scores over 60 points, sets a new career high. And it's the third thing you talk about, and with good reason. Karl-Anthony Towns had 44 points in the first half, and I think everybody started clicking over to see exactly how special of a night he was going to have. And I think that Minnesota strayed away from what was working. They honestly stopped playing the right way, and I think they took their opponent lightly. And the Hornets, they haven't been in too many good headlines this year, but they got to play spoiler, and it's an opportunity for them to, I guess, take it personally that, Karl-Anthony Towns was having the type of night that he had against them. And even their head coach said that they were trying to pat the stats a little bit. And Anthony Edwards said they were trying to pat the stats a little bit, and it came back to haunt them at the end of the day. So we'll look back and see that he thankfully does not have the distinction of most points in a loss, but it's really hard to score 60 plus in a game and come up on the losing end of things. So the Hornets also not their biggest news storyline made as well, but certainly a big one for them.
Yeah, crazy night last night in the NBA. Okay, so updated on the MVP odds on FanDuel. We got a boost for Embiid here, who was already the favorite, but moved up a lot this morning. He's now plus 130 to win the MVP, followed by Nikola Jokic at plus 250, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plus 360, Luka 9-1, Giannis as low as we've seen him in years at 12-1. And the one thing that I would say about this award, Gilbert, is that nobody's winning the MVP in January. I learned my lesson with that the last couple of years. This thing just shifts back and forth. I think Luka was probably the MVP favorite at this time last year. So I guess we'll see how this whole thing goes. But naturally, Embiid's playing time has to be somewhat of a concern in order to qualify for this award.
Right. That's a great point, Craig. You talk about the new rules that the NBA has where you need to have a minimum of games played, depending on why you miss games, but it's somewhere between 62 and 65 games played. And he's missed quite a few games already up to this point in the season. So that's something to be mindful of when taking these odds into account. I think right now that Joel Embiid is doing so much, he's making it hard for anybody to choose anybody other than him. But I think that as we learned last year, and as you mentioned, that can quickly change. Giannis is a great one to point out because his numbers are incredible this season. The Bucks have a pretty impressive record, but the guys around him are doing so many things right now that it's hard to even pay attention. But I think that if Giannis has a stretch of 4 or 5 straight 40-point games, which we all know that he's capable of doing, you might pay a little bit closer attention to the numbers that he's been putting together all season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to remain near the top, just given the surprise that the Thunder have been this season. I think there's value there as well because he's averaging over 31 points per game. And the Thunder are going to end up at the top of the Western Conference or near the top of the Western Conference this season. So just given the fact that Joel Embiid might miss too many games and the fact that the Sixers could very well backslide at some point this season, I think that it's still worth keeping your options open and really paying attention to the value with those other guys up there.
All right, let's look at 2 games in the NBA tonight and see if we can get a position on either, Gilbert. We've got the Knicks taking on the Nets. Knicks are 4.5-point favorites. Total 223. Let's start here.
I'll start with the Knicks. I like the Knicks here and the points. The last time these two teams met, the Knicks won by 18, and they're a better team than they were at that point. And the Nets had a big win over the Lakers over the weekend, but I think that they're still trending in the wrong direction, so I like the Knicks here.
All right, and then is there any reason to take the Lakers tonight? I mean, I guess it's the NBA. Anything can happen, but I mean, no LeBron. Can they keep it close? The line's 8.5, total 230.
I think that there's a chance they could keep it close. And the reason I say that is because they still have Anthony Davis and the Clippers don't have Ivica Zubac tonight. So Anthony Davis has an opportunity to dominate on the interior. But when you look at it, the Lakers have won the first two against the Clippers this year. But you kind of step back a little bit, and the Clippers had won 11 straight over the Lakers prior to that. So history favors the Clippers tonight, especially with LeBron James not playing. But if Anthony Davis can dominate and really put a stamp on the game, then they could at least keep it close.
All right, fair enough, Gilbert. Great seeing you. Thanks again for coming on. And hopefully we have this much to talk about next week when you come back on the show. A couple 60-point scorers straight in the NBA. I always love that.
Sounds good.
All right, Gilbert McGregor with us here on NewsWire. Coming up next, it's time to dive into the latest news and updates on sports betting's potential in the state of California. Is it 24? Is it 25? Is it even in the future? Matthew Waters will join us coming up next to give us the very latest. And then former big leaguer Mike Cameron joins us to talk Hall of Fame and also what's on deck for the upcoming Seattle Mariners season. We'll be right back with more NewsWire. Don't go away.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Kyle Shanahan said after the game it was the same shoulder that made Deebo Samuel miss 2 games throughout this regular season in 2023.
Last time it was a scapular fracture. He missed a couple weeks. By video, we don't see that. It was the play that he got hit and had a head check. It's more believed to be a muscle injury. X-rays are proven to be negative. They're saying 50-50 right now.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a Knicks fan. I feel bad for Obi Toppin. I mean, Obi Toppin was backing up Julius Randle, and then he got his opportunity. Indiana was playing great. Didn't play Dave, brought him off the bench. And now they got Pascal Siakam, and now he's going into a free agent year. So Obi may be looking for a new home. But I do like that fast break if it's Halliburton with Obi and Siakam.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
They were best friends. Like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA, and they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories. But Raptors responded.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the big games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
back to NewsWire. Guest contributor today from Legal Sports Report set to talk about the latest on sports betting's possibility for becoming legal in California. It's Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report. He's here with us once again on the show. Matthew, thanks again for the appearance. And I thought we would be coming on the show with a great update from the state of California and the potential for having us maybe be having all of our viewers on the West Coast being excited to be able to watch us and use some of our tidbits, advice, etc. to bet. That ain't happening anytime soon.
No, it sure isn't, Craig. And let's be clear, it was never going to happen. This is simply the folks behind this initiative accepting what was going to happen and not wasting millions of dollars to do it. To recap, we had a couple of gentlemen that wanted to build a sports betting platform that would essentially be given to the tribes in the state and would kick back like 25% to tribes that are not gaming tribes. And it was never met with approval from the tribal industry in California. There were a couple of small tribes that bought in, but the overwhelming amount of tribal interest, they just said, no, we don't want in on this. And look, they're being smart about it, right? We can do this a couple of ways in California. They want to do it through the ballot. They want to get it approved by voters. So you're looking at this year being an off year after 2022, when, the tribal interest and the commercial interest, they spent record amounts of money, and it was just ugly for everyone. And it left a bad taste in everybody's mouth when talking about sports betting. And so when this initiative was proposed, and it was supposedly, on the backs of Indian country, well, there was a lot of people that took exception to that. And finally now, one of the proponents, Casey Thompson, told LSR that, he said that if the tribes did not come together to back this, that he would step out. And he said, I'm a man of my word, and I won't create any more division. But again, he wasn't really creating that much division, because while there were a couple of tribes that wanted to back them, it was never going to happen. The California tribes, the majority of them, they were ready to fight back against this. They were going to spend some money to make it clear that this was not what they wanted to happen. The commercial operators who went against the tribes in 2022, they came out to say this year, like, whoa, let's be really clear. We are now working with the biggest tribes in California. We want to support the way that they want to do it. So we are clearly not funding any of this. We have no interest in this. And so, when you hear those kind of things, you start to wonder why they would spend $25 million trying to get the 1.2 million signatures they need just to get it on the ballot. And, you're scratching your head wondering how this guy has this much money to burn. And, it looks like it's not going to happen now. And so it's surprising to say, but not having sports betting on the 2024 ballot in California is a win for everyone that wants to get sports betting legalized and set up the way that they want it in 2026. So that's the way that we're looking at it now. This was just a blip in the radar, but we're back to the way things were supposed to be in 2024 now. And now we have 2 years of the commercial operators, the big guys, and the tribes, the big guys in California, getting together, figuring out what they want this to look like. The commercial operators understand that they will be a vendor to the tribes in this situation. And so we'll see what the formal request looks like in 2026. But for now, no, we're dead in the water. And it didn't even get off the dock, Craig.
Every cliche in the book to not get it started sounds like California. Okay, so now let's pivot over to some potential predictions. Now, again, stock predictions are just that. It's, honestly, like making sports predictions when it really comes down to it, Matt. But DraftKings, at least for the people who are making these predictions, are saying that there could be some future profitability in their stock. I'm always careful about using the possibility as opposed to a guarantee, because it's just like anything else.
Yeah, and let's be clear. Don't listen to me, and don't buy just because an analyst says to, right? You have to, right. When you get into the stock market, you got to do your due diligence and make sure you know what's going on. But yeah, these big banks right now, they're behind DraftKings. According to NASDAQ, the 26 analysts, it all averages out to a strong buy for DraftKings. And Jeffrey Stanchel of Stifel came out and said the same thing. He upgraded to buy from hold. And he said, look, there are a couple of negatives coming up for DraftKings, right? Like, we have been watching the state reports come out for November and seeing that these states and these operators just got crushed in November on low hold. The bettors really took it to them in November, and that could lead to a significant EBITDA drop for these guys. And Stanchel said it could mean even missing, the midpoint of their guidance by like $75 million, which is significant when you talk about a DraftKings company that has come and they've raised their guidance every quarter, and they've really been showing what they can do to make money. And that has mainly been, one, stop advertising so much and focus on retention, and two, make their product better through parlays and really get not just a lucky hold here or there, but really build in some structural hold improvements. And so that's what Stanchel sees now as coming up. And look, we have Flutter, the parent company of FanDuel, also getting ready to list in the US. They're going to go live, should be January 29th next week. So there's going to be some of that attention taken away from DraftKings, potentially some of that market volume taken away from DraftKings. And the other thing that he says, look, we have to watch what these tier 2 operators are doing. ESPN, Fanatics, BetMGM, Bet365. If those guys are going to continue to spend, and not just in customer acquisition, but spend on product, which we find out is really what's winning the day at the end of the day. If they continue to improve their product, then we could see a little bit of a shaky pedestal for FanDuel and DraftKings as those 1 and 2. They could start to lose some of that share in the market. But when he's looking at DraftKings now, this is really a totally different company from the company that went public in April 2020. DraftKings now has their older states growing and essentially covering business operations, they said at one point. And the new states, they know that they don't have to go in and spend as much as they did, because again, it's not necessarily who comes out with the flashiest offer, it's who can offer the best product. And so I think the market is really starting to shift on what it thinks about DraftKings. Obviously, it's easy to say that, right? When a company finally starts to show profit instead of losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, it's big shocker that analysts like that and investors want to see that, right? But yeah, DraftKings is going to be a stock to watch this year. And right now, Stanchel just said there's a lot of upside in the price to where he thinks it's going to go a $45 year-end price target. And, we'll see. But DraftKings, their operations, their bottom line, huge story for this year.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, and people watch it invest, and for some reason you don't make money investing in DraftKings, just go to Matthew Waters' house, knock on the door, thank him for all the. No, we're already clear on this, folks. Okay, so let's end here. So a very unique opportunity for Washington D.C. They legalized sports betting. They see the main operators coming in, taking over. We've heard of them before: BetMGM, FanDuel, DraftKings, etc. And then the state says, "Hey, look, we could do this on our own. Launch our own app, run it through the lottery, and have the same kind of success that these companies are having." But I think they're learning the hard way, Matt, that that's not always the case.
They started to learn that shortly after they launched, Craig, when the only app that was live district-wide, except for federal areas, Gambit DC, it was being beaten in terms of handle by an in-person sportsbook at Capital One Arena run by then William Hill, now Caesars. But think about that. The product was so bad in DC that in the middle of a pandemic, people were still willing to go out and wrap around the block at Capital One Arena to get their money down with William Hill instead of giving it to the lottery and Intralot. And what we heard last week is stunning. Intralot, their contract with the OLG is up this July. Intralot has now come to the OLG, the lottery office, and said, look, people don't like our app. It doesn't have what the bigger apps have. People are turned off by what we did in the beginning, which was those high prices. They wanted to get about, a 20% hold, which just does not work in sports betting, leads to really juiced lines. And so they're saying, look, we need to bring in a subcontractor, one of these bigger guys, to operate the platform for us. And that's shocking to hear. It shocked the DC Council. They've been watching this closely. And you're talking about getting a new platform provider approved and then launched, but your contract is up in July. There's not a whole lot of time for that. And now we find out that you weren't even considering launching a request for proposal to bid this out to get other companies interested to see how that could shake out. So DC has a couple of options. They can extend this Gambit situation for a couple years if they want to. They can also scrap it and say, look, we want the mobile operators in here now. They could start taxing them at 20% and give them an area beyond the 2 blocks of their sports arena partner. And I think that's personally how it's going to go. But it's just a mess in DC right now. And I was shocked at what the latest proposals were.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's not surprising. Everybody trying to get their hand in the cookie jar. It's just not an easy thing to do if the jar doesn't make sense. I don't know if that really made sense on my end either. But regardless, Matt, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but he's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Kyle Shanahan said after the game it was the same shoulder that made Deebo Samuel miss 2 games throughout this regular season in 2023.
Last time it was a scapular fracture. He missed a couple weeks. By video, we don't see that. It was the play that he got hit and had a head check. It's more believed to be a muscle injury. X-rays are proven to be negative. They're saying 50-50 right now.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a Knicks fan. I feel bad for Obi Toppin. I mean, Obi Toppin was backing up Julius Randle, and then he got his opportunity in Indiana, was playing great, didn't play D, brought him off the bench, and now they got Pascal Siakam, and now he's going into a free agent year. So Obi may be looking for a new home, but I do like that fast break if it's Halliburton with Obi and Siakam.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
They were best friends. Like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA, and they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories. But Raptors responded.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Before we talk some baseball to wrap up the show, let's get back to the NBA tonight. Two marquee matchups, one between the Knicks and Nets, the other without LeBron tonight, and the Lakers going up against the LA Clippers. Here's Ben Stevens with a preview. All right, before we... Oh, okay. We'll do that. We'll do that tomorrow. How about that? All right. Instead of the video, let's do this. Let's bring in my buddy Mike Cameron, of course, played 17 years in the big leagues. And you talk about being able to run, to hit, to throw, to steal, and play at such a high level for so many years. Cam did it all. He joins us now here on NewsWire. We're going to go over the Seattle Mariners. We'll go over everything happening in Major League Baseball as well. Cam, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to catch up.
Definitely, Craig. I'm glad to be here, man, to be able to be at your service.
No, I mean, the pleasure is mine, man, to see you. And I always love seeing you. I love your opinions on the game. And knowing you as long as I have, it's just so awesome to catch up with you here in the new year. So let's start talking about present day. And then, of course, tonight, futures are going to change for a lot of players that you played with in the Hall of Fame. But let me not get there. Let me start here. Team that you've obviously played with, followed very closely, and still doing things with, the Seattle Mariners. Very interesting offseason for them and for everybody else, by the way, Cam. Not a lot of players signed early, a lot of waiting here in free agency. What do you make of what you've seen thus far in baseball's offseason? And then let's go to what you think Seattle has done.
Well, pretty much, I think the teams that have done the most is like the Cincinnati Reds and maybe the Dodgers, and a few other pieces is added trade pieces or whatever. But as far as the big free agents, only the Dodgers have kind of went out on their limb and went out and took that chance. So with everybody else, I think it has a lot to do with the local TV network deals or whatever that's taking place. But obviously, you wouldn't think billionaires would have a problem with bringing in good players so you can still bring people to your stadium to be able to put the money in that perspective to get your money back at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think, look, a lot of people wonder that too, and why the Dodgers have spent so much. But look, Houston finally went out there, spent some loot. The Pirates signed Aroldis Chapman the other day. So maybe we're making some progress there. As far as the Mariners are concerned, they've been involved in some trades in the offseason, as you know, Mike. But, in the end, they still have Julio Rodriguez, still have a very talented team coming in. But now in this tough division, facing off against Houston and facing off against the Texas Rangers, and even with those teams not doing very much outside of Josh Hader, they really don't have to. The Rangers are coming off the World Series.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone knows that, the Mariners have been close for a couple of years now. And obviously, you would have liked to go out and add one of those bigger bats or whatever. But we saw a different trend and kind of lowering things with, getting rid of Gino and the young Kelenic, which is a very prized kid. I think he's going to have a great year this year. And also Teoscar. So, and a veteran leadership and a pitching staff in Marco. But they brought in a few other guys through via trade. And hopefully, there's something there to at least get it started. And then you're able to see where you're at the All-Star break or close to the All-Star break and try to add pieces. Or I shouldn't say pieces, try to add players to be able to help you facilitate in continuing to trend upwards opposed to downward or sideways or staying the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the hope for a lot of people. And look, I wish that we were doing the show today and I'm asking you about Cody Bellinger and Blake Snell and we're diving around the league and talking about where all these players signed. Let's be honest, folks, it didn't happen. So we're going to pivot over and we're going to talk about Mike Cameron's era of playing baseball, who, by the way, played in an era with a lot of guys that are going to go in the Hall of Fame. Cam, I know you won't say it, but I will. You played at that level with these guys for a long period of time. Gold Glove. I mean, just look up Mike's stats, okay? You'll see it for yourself. What we know today, based on at least the ballots that have been counted that are public, is that, let's start here, Cam. Adrian Beltre looks like a slam dunk Hall of Famer. He's going to get one of the most votes ever in the history of baseball on the first ballot. Let's start with him. This should be no surprise, right? His first time in, getting in over 90% of the vote or close to it.
Most definitely. Top five third baseman in the history of the game, as I would say. And just study, man. A great guy. Uh, Great energy. A leader for a lot of the Latin guys, especially, but a really quiet leader amongst the clubhouse guys. But the one thing about AB is what he did best was he went to the post every day, man. I saw this guy playing with two bomb hamstrings at one point. And, I got a chance to play with him in Boston and then play against him for the rest of my career, man. So he's been solid for a long time. And once he got to Texas, he kind of found his niche and he was able to continue to be productive for a very long time. And you got to remember, this guy started at 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, incredible player. I'm happy to see that we don't hold it against some of these guys and put them in on the first ballot. Either you are a Hall of Famer or you're not. But this is not the first go around for Todd Helton, and it looks like there's a chance, Mike, that he is going to get in the Hall of Fame today. And speaking of first ballots, I don't know. I guess I'm surprised. I thought Joe Mauer had a shot to get in the Hall of Fame. I didn't think that he would perform in terms of votes this well. So at the very least, it looks like we're going to put three players into the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done at the end of the day today. Does that sound? And I want to get to Gary Sheffield too, but at the very least, it looks like three to me.
Yeah, it definitely those are the top three. Um, I'm more so of like Todd Helton. Look, I don't care if he played in Colorado. I don't care if he played in Alaska, wherever he played at. The guy could flat out rake the baseball. It's just unfortunate that he played at a time when there were so many good first basemen, and so he kind of gets sandwiched into all of that because he didn't hit the 40, the consistent 40 plus, 35 plus all every single year. He was more of an all around talented first baseman. More of a Keith Hernandez or a or Don Mattingly type of player who was very consistent with a very high batting average every single year in and year out, man. And he was the leader of that team as soon as like Larry Walker and some of those guys left. So Todd Helton, man, he killed us when I was in San Diego all the time, man. Like we hated it. Yeah, the only guy I've really seen that could just rake Trevor Hoffman, like he was like it was like regular for him. So I look for seeing some of these guys get in. We need some fresh people to be able to get in the Hall of Fame. I'm not a very big Hall guy, but if a guy is a Hall of Famer, man, what is it that he becomes a Hall of Famer the first time, and then he's not a Hall of Famer for 2 or 3 years, and then he is a Hall of Famer all of a sudden? So I know there's ballots, first ballot, second ballot, or whatever it may be, but these guys kind of earn their way to be able to have a chance to be considered as a Hall of Fame type of ball player.
And Billy Wagner on the fringe. If he doesn't get in this year, he'll get in next year. Gary Sheffield, Cam, his last year on the ballot here. Of course, I covered him for a long time with the Marlins winning the World Series here. He said, look, I'm a Hall of Famer since the day that I was born. The way that this is trending is, at least with the public ballots, is close to 75%. But Cam, I've been down this road before with these voters. The ballots we don't see, I don't think are going to have Gary Sheffield on that ballot. I don't think he's going to get in. I think he should, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then we would have to wait a few years to see if he gets in. But I guess we'll hope for the best here with Sheff. I just don't know what you think about this.
A very big advocate of Sheff. One of the premier hitters in the 90s and the early 2000s. One of the most feared hitters. Every team he went to, man, he made the players that much better around him. I'm pretty sure Chipper Jones won a MVP because of Gary Sheffield popping up and playing for the Braves for all those years. And he held his own also. When he went to LA, he did the same thing. When he went to, New York, he was right in the middle of the mix with all those superstars they had over there. Sheff I went to Detroit and helped those guys out. So, he's been obviously in the obvious with the Marlins. Gary Sheffield was one of the first guys I've seen that, where it really was 330, 30, and 100 type of player. And the guys, look, the numbers are there. Yes, his defense is not as great as everyone makes it out to be, but you ain't getting the Hall of Fame on defense anymore. You get in the Hall of Fame because of what you can do with the bat and over a consistent period of time amongst the greats.
I agree. Well, Cam, thanks again for weighing in on these players. Always great to catch up with you. And we'll see what happens tonight. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Oh, definitely.
Awesome to have Mike Cameron here on the show. All right, now let's preview our 2 NBA games tonight. Here's Ben Stevens with a look at the Knicks and Nets, Lakers and Clippers.
Craig, it is rivalry week in the NBA, around the association. All week long, we are going to have some rivalries play out on the hardwood. It really gets started on this Tuesday evening, some crosstown, intercity rivalries to break down. We start here in New York City, but we go out to Brooklyn. Inside the Barclays Center, the Brooklyn Nets will host the New York Knicks tonight as rivalry week truly gets underway in the NBA. The home team, the Nets, a 4-point home underdog inside the Barclays Center against the New York Knicks, who, Craig, have won 9 of their last 11 games at this stage of the NBA season. And New York, as the favored side throughout this NBA campaign, pretty good covering numbers, 16-9 against the spread. Craig, an incredibly important thing here when you look at the New York Knicks in their recent form of good play. Again, winners of 9 of their last 11. Pay attention to this total. Tom Thibodeau, he is intense on the defensive side of the basketball, and that's what he reiterates within his Knickerbockers team. So when you look at what the New York Knicks have done, winning 9 of their last 11, all 9 victories, the total here, 223, has stayed under. The Knicks have gone under in 10 of their last 11. Brooklyn has been an underdog for a good majority of this year. In fact, Craig, in 27 games up until this point, 11, 14, and 2 against the spread. But in their last 9 games booked as an underdog, they've only covered twice, in both of those covers an outright win. So that's the first game up in rivalry week on this Tuesday night around the association. We go from Brooklyn all the way out to the West Coast, the inter-stadium rivalry in Los Angeles, the Battle of LA between the Clippers and the Lakers. Craig, you will see an 8.5-point number here, not because one team is performing incredibly well, although the Clippers are, as we'll get to in just a second, but this guy right here, LeBron James, listed as out tonight for the matchup against the Clips, dealing with an ankle injury. So an 8.5-point spread in favor of the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard and LA on a really good bit of form here, Craig. 8-10 at the end of November. From that point, the Clippers have won 19 of their last 23 games. And as a favorite this year, covering in a big way, 21-13 against the spread. The Lakers as the underdog, meanwhile, 8-9 ATS. 5 of those 8 covers, an outright victory. Those are the numbers you need to know, Craig, for rivalry week in the association. The teams that you know the closest, you keep your enemies close, and you play them on the hardwood during this week in the NBA.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Kyle Shanahan said after the game it was the same shoulder that made Deebo Samuel miss 2 games throughout this regular season in 2023.
Last time it was a scapular fracture. He missed a couple weeks. By video, we don't see that. It was the play that he got hit and had a head check. It's more believed to be a muscle injury. X-rays are proven to be negative. They're saying 50-50 right now.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a Knicks fan. I feel bad for Obi Toppin. I mean, Obi Toppin was backing up Julius Randle, and then he got his opportunity. Indiana was playing great, didn't play deep, brought him off the bench, and now they got Pascal Siakam, and now he's going into a free agent year. So Obi may be looking for a new home. But I do like that fast break if it's Halliburton. with Obi and Siakam.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
They were best friends. Like Siakam's best friend on the team was Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher's best friend on the team was Pascal Siakam. They're not American, right? So there's different cliques in the NBA. And they were very, very tight. So Chris Boucher, I got rattled seeing Chris Boucher and thinking about the memories, but Raptors responded.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
As we wrap up the show today, I bet you didn't know this, that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, probably one of the most popular actors in all of Hollywood. You've seen a movie with him, I'm sure, at some point. Did you know that he did not have full ownership of the name The Rock? And if you've noticed in all the movies, he's, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Well, guess what? He's now been appointed to the board of directors at TKO, which is the ownership group of the WWE and UFC, and as part of the deal, he gets $30 million in stock and full ownership of the trademark name, The Rock, which of course was instituted initially by this company and the WWE. For those of you who didn't know, The Rock was a wrestler, professional wrestler for many, many years, arguably the most popular wrestler at that time, but I guess he did not own his full ownership, and somehow this has just been unnoticed through the years. Well, congrats to The Rock, WWE, UFC, TKO. They've all been able to work this thing out, and The Rock now has full ownership of his trademark name. Pretty cool there. Sure, it'll be profitable for him in the future. Okay, that will do it for our show today. We want to thank our guests here on the program, Mike Cameron, for coming on the show. Also, thanks to Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report, in addition to Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. Our producer today is Sam Yarnell. Of course, I'm Craig Mish. We've got the early line coming up next, followed by Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. And then don't forget, coming up later this week, we've got our great fantasy football programming for those of you playing daily fantasy sports for the AFC Championship and NFC Championship this weekend. Myself and Davis Maddock have you covered on Saturday. Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker have you covered on Sunday. So hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Keep it locked here to SportsGrid. Plenty of NBA coverage tonight, NHL coverage, and college basketball as well, with all of our great guests here on the grid. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our next edition of NewsWire. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you then.